Greetings and salutations to all you folks out there for the second time in the live stream, because we just had a mishost. We're working through the Legend of the Stars qualifiers. We're up to round 4, and in about 3 weeks, we're going to be doing the final for that $500 freaking prize. So the top 4 finishers in this tournament will be guaranteed a slot in the finals, and there is going to be a prize at the end for first, second, and third place. So there is a lot to fight for in this, and hopefully both of these guys will do their absolute level best. Couple of familiar names: Morax versus Blastchild on the map Diversity. We've all seen this several times before, though this is not often played in a 1 versus 1 format. Now, on the left-hand side, that is Blastchild taking the lovely Cybern that we all so dearly enjoy taking to the ladder due to its fast tanks and overall nastiness with the units it has at its disposal. He is going to be doing a hell of a manual reclaim pattern with his initial engineer, moving out towards a mass extractor and a radar adjacent for mass adjacency on the radar. I don't even know why he's doing such a thing, but he's going to be getting that down so he knows exactly what's coming across the middle of the map, and then rolling second and third engineer to finish out his build order, rolling into second air factory, additional land factories, and then a second air later on in the game. Morax, on the other side, has taken a much more conservative approach to his build. He is going for strictly mass reclaim across the center with his engineer. Then he's snagged, you can see this one wreck right here, the transport. That one is worth 97 mass as opposed to 28 on the other wreck, so that is definitely worth the most. And then he's going to zip across for 241, 241, 97 attack move order to zap the rest. He is UEF, probably the 2 closest balanced factions in this game are UEF and Cybern, since neither one of them has Hover T1. Both of them have amphibious engineers that can die to torpedoes. They share a lot of common functionality across the Tier 1 and Tier 2 phases, both of them having range bots, etc., etc. The only big difference you'll see in the Tier 1 phase is the speed on the Mantis and the Jester availability to Cybern, and then the slightly better transport HP and slightly beefier T1 tanks for UEF. So, Morax dropping down as many power generators as he possibly can before going for an air factory third, and then it looks like he's rolling directly into a 4th land factory for a total of 3. You'll notice that there are reclaim points down here as well. Quite a bit of mass in these wrecks. If you can use your ACU to gather one or the other, that will benefit you in the long term. And it looks like Blastchild with that second air factory. Oh! He has actually doubled up on his air factories before pushing into his additional land forces. So he is going incredibly heavy on the air in this game. That is an odd thing to see. But he's got his air scout across his opponent's base. That means he will know how late that air factory is. He's going for a transport and a bomber simultaneously, which is probably of significant strain on his economy, but hopefully, well, there's Morax. We'll take a look at him first. 21 mass per tick, 200 power, looking good and full on both bars, although good and full on both bars is probably not what you want to have this early on in the game, because you want to be expending your mass, getting it out into the field in the form of tanks. That means that Set Focus Army 0 should be Blastchild, who, yes, is at a very, very hard power stall, even after having paused his air factory. That is going to get him up to 30, and he is struggling. So a bit of a botched build order, if I do say so myself, but he is getting out into the map and does have a bomber out, which can harass at will in a few of these areas. I think his opening land game is going to be very weak, though, and that is going to set him up for some serious problems later on in the game, because on Diversity, the amount of mass extractors is extremely high. However, use F2? What do you mean? Alt F2? Or Control F2 for the cheating menu to click between the two? I'd rather hit the console, because that gets in the way less. The map control is pivotal on diversity because the mass extractors are so spread out. Typically, you'll have team maps that are set up with dedicated choke points, which I guess you could argue that there's a choke point here and a choke point here, but it is far too open, I think, to effectively make that point. You'll have a couple of choke points that you can secure, and then you'll have clumps of mass extractors behind. And while there are clumps of 4 for the spawn points, you'll notice that overall this map is very open-ended, and it does lend itself to raiding, as we're seeing up here on the north side, by these 3 strikers that are moving in on the expansion engineers, making sure to kill that build power before moving on to potentially take out a couple of mass extractors and overall be a pain in the buttocks in the back line. So Morax is going to be coming from a position of strength here on the land control. However, Blast Chilled, if he can rectify his power situation, which it looks like he's trying to via reclaiming engineers and shutting down his air factories entirely, he is bringing online his 6th and 7th land factory simultaneously, as opposed to Morax with a total of 4 going on 5. Rolling into the 2nd air factory. So overall, I think Blast Chilled has kind of gimped himself here because he's triggered a double air factory on his opponent while not having the power to run his own air factories consistently, and he's behind on land. We just have to hope that his initial rush for engineers is enough to drag him out of the pit that he has gotten himself into. He's got 2 more land factories going down on the outside. I do sincerely hope that he gets a radar up very quickly because he is getting raided all over the place here, and this is going to turn into a mess. We've got engineers dropping for the Hydro. This seems like an odd thing to drop, but considering the 2 factions at play here, this is actually a safe bet. You get some reclaim, you get a Hydro, you get a mass extractor, and it's blocked off by the water, cannot be raided until the tier 2 phase when you go for amphibious tanks or hover tanks, respecting the factions. So it is a smarter move than it would initially appear, I think. But we're just going to have to let this play out a little bit longer, because tallying up the total mass extractors in control, Morax is far and away ahead in that regard. He's got a land factory in the northern expansion that is pumping engineers, which are happily sucking up the trees, gaining that little bit of, I think it's 10 power 1 mass per tree, or 10 100 for the tree clumps, which is not inconsequential, though each tree be small, the forest be mighty. And that brings us up to 9 total land factories, with 1 stalled for Blast Chilled. I think that might be a T2 HQ upgrade that has been paused. I'm not sure why he paused that, probably power problems. But hopefully he gets it online quickly, because the amount of units that are gray on the field is too damn high. Excellent use of T1 point defense, I must say. Morax placing 1 in each expansion. They're not wastes of mass if they're protecting critical hard points, which is exactly what he's doing right here. This ensures that a couple of raiding tanks aren't going to be able to kill off the mass extractors. They don't cost that much, and it lets you move a bit more freely with the units that you do have. Blast Shield is going to take an upper hand on the northern conflict here. He did have enough Mantis to force this back. Meanwhile, on the south, his ACU is going to get tangled with a fairly decent quantity of units. Using the rule of thumb calculation that we all know is of varying reliability, Blast Shield has 1 ACU with 6 backing tanks, and then on the other side, we have a grand total of 12 tanks and 1 artillery. So this ACU might drop down a little bit lower than you might want HP-wise, but this ACU should be able to handle this entire force. The problem is maneuverability, because the tanks are significantly faster than that ACU and will end up running by it and hitting the rear base anyway. Seeing the oncoming units and knowing that he lacks the forces in the north to deny it, Morax has actually dropped 2 additional T1 point defense in this expansion, hardening it up past the point of being overrun. He's also got 2 more land factories to expand production, and is now ready to move back out into the world and protect this forlorn expansion to the far north, where he has lost his engineers and is losing his point defense, but should be able to recover that quite nicely with minimal loss of economy. Blast Shield is running fairly behind in score here. We can go ahead while we're getting a little bit more calm on the combat front. We can take a look-see at what the economies look like. Morax is at 63 mass per tick, 680 power. He's got a T2 mass extractor and 3/4 of another, and has already finished his T2 land factory. That's going to be pumping out pillars to roll to the front, and I am sure that we're going to see some support factories of backing up that production to an even greater degree over the next couple of minutes. We also have a T2 land factory for Blast Shield, who's rolling 45 mass per tick at 580 power. So very similar on the power levels. Fairly low on the mass, about a third less for Blast Shield versus Morax, and not really doing too well on his push for T2. Never mind, I totally missed that. He has 2 T2 mass extractors, same as. He just hasn't filled out all of his expansions quite yet. So the superior map control on Morax's side is definitely making the difference on that. We go back over here to the all view, and we can see this push in the middle being made with Morax's ACU. He is going to go claim the reclaim in the center, and he's going to field enough units to actually stage a threat to this northern expansion. Blast Shield getting a radar down and point defense finally, very belatedly, but hopefully it'll be enough to deny all of this nonsense headed his way. There's a very oddly placed move order right here. This is exactly what you do not want versus Cybran. Cybran T1 artillery has an epic AoE with the stun capabilities, and when you clump up your units in such a way, honestly, any T1 artillery from any faction except maybe Aeon will mess up your day. These nice clumps here are epic for killing 6 to 7 T1 units at a time with a single artillery strike. Morax backing up slightly off the center here. He has decided to go back in. I think he was waiting to see exactly what the outcome of that T1 battle was going to be. But in the meantime, we're going to see a bit of assistance on this T2 HQ, rolling it into Tier 3. Blast Shield is probably going to go for Loyalist spam to try and recover his position on the map and hopefully push out into new and better territories. Meanwhile, we do have Tier 2 support factories online in both the southern and northern expansions. Those are going to be rolling pillars as well, adding to the UEF combat capability on the field. Bear in mind that the pillars are one of the single strongest T2 units in the game. If you stack a horde of pillars mass for mass versus just about any other T2 combat unit, they perform marvelously. Disregarding some extremely skillful micro... Oh, Blast Shield, please. Give me an overcharge on that. No! Oh, wow. He is going to be in close with the ACU, and he's going to push those tanks away from his expansion, so kudos to him on that. We do have scouts moving in. That is going to let Morax know, and yes, as long as he's looking closely, he will see it, that there is a T3 factory coming online. Fairly easy thing to spot as long as you are paying attention. He's going to go gun upgrade on the ACU, a very good response to that move from Blast Shield, because if any of those loyalists dare to come close enough to the ACU to get a little FaceTime, well, then he will happily answer with some energy to the face. Looks like T1 point defense is going to go down. That can easily be rebuilt. Radar coverage is going to be maintained. Finally getting all of the rocks up here for Blast Shield as he struggles to continue with his expansion. Blast Shield was just shut down so hard in the early game that he is fighting for his life to get back in control of this situation. We're seeing lots of energy storage going down in addition to an extra T2 power generator. That means that Morax is preparing to abuse overcharge as hard as he possibly can, and also storing up energy so that if he needs to drop a fast upgrade in the future, he will be able to. There goes the T1 power generators on the Control K. That's going to be mass to finish off the upgrade. And then we also have... No, we do not. It is still rolling T2. So it looks like he is going to try to decide the game at this phase. We have the first loyalist pushing out of the factory. on the front line, with a second following up and a third nearing the end of production. So Blast Shield has a very narrow window of opportunity in which to stab out at his opponent and try to claim a couple of these expansions. If he's able to knock some mass off the grid, he can even up this game still. It is not over, but he is also going to lose one of his own expansions. This is a tier 1 expansion, nothing of good value in it to speak of, but still, mass is mass, and that is 8 income that he really cannot do without. There's the ACU on the front line versus those 3 loyalists. Not a danger for the ACU as of yet, but you gotta be careful when you're pushing that far forward on that low of a upgraded commander. Only 1200 HP, add in the stun from the loyalists, and that could potentially end very badly for you indeed. T1 factories getting reclaimed, pouring mass into that income for more loyalists. We're up to 5 now. Still not a threat for the ACU, but it is getting better over time. Blast Shield coming in with the unupgraded commander. This is a lethal force if it all pulls in on the ACU at the same time, and I'm not sure that Blast Shield actually has overcharge. It does not appear that he has an energy storage, so this could end incredibly badly for him, and yes, he is completely surrounded. Morax, it would seem, does see that the ACU is isolated. That is going to be GG for that ACU. If he would have run back down towards the water, he might have had a chance of recovering due to having all of that T3 out on the field. But that was a very difficult game for Blast Shield to come back from. The early game stall looked like one of my own builds. I think he might have been watching the wrong person, trying to brush up on his build orders, and he just wasn't able to bring it back. The lack of map control established in the first 5 minutes of the game ended up being enough to completely wipe him out later on. Well played by both of these guys. I understand the rust from Blast Shield. I feel it myself, but Morax is going to move on into the next round of the winner's bracket. Blast Shield dropping down to the losers. We're going to drop down to the losers bracket for a game. This is Qualifiers versus Iser. Seraphim versus UEF. This is an all-land map, though, so it doesn't particularly matter. Might look like water down in the gulch, but it is dry, I assure you. So Iser running Seraphim. He's going Land Factory first. This is a Hydro Rush map, so you'll see he's got all 4 mass extractors planned, rolling into a Hydro. Same thing for Koiskix as UEF on the other side. Things to notice about this map: the Genji's Chasma. I don't know how to pronounce that. My English is terrible. I'm American after all. You can't expect me to speak the language fluently. There's a lot of reclaim here. It is mostly in the form of these rocks around the edges, 75s on the big boulders and 10s on the smalls. And then there are a few 38s around the base. So this is basically build way too many land factories for how many mass extractors you actually have, and then hope that you can reclaim enough to feed them. Because the person who has more tanks gets more map control, and therefore gets more reclaim. And it is a never-ending vicious cycle of reclaiming more, building more tanks, and hoping for the best as you go along. Yes, Brink speaks American, not English confirmed. That is true of most of us, I feel. So we got a couple Salems moving out at Selens. Sorry, not Salem. Salems are the boats, Selens are the scouts. Those are going to skirt around the outside edges and try to figure out where the enemy tanks are going. Koiskix is going to drop a second land factory, making epic use of the adjacency, getting power generator plus mechs adjacency on 2 different land factories from the same 2 buildings, and then he's going to have to get something else on track to go with later. He is going to move his ACU, it looks like, up to the center, continuing his build with 2 engineers, rolling out for a total of 7 land factories, which honestly I think is a bit conservative on this map. Iser, on the other hand, is spawning the mother of all power generator spams and rolling into his 3rd land factory with the ACU. So the enemy ACU is going to be up on the front, securing the center a little bit earlier in the game. We'll have to see how that plays out on this map as an option. Selen goes down to the tank on that side, so it looks like Koiskix is going to take a little bit of an advantage on the early map control. This map, Chasma, I have only played on once, and I think I've only ever watched one game on it, so I really am not sure whether there is an established meta or not. So hopefully we can all watch it and learn something today, because this map is on the ladder, I do believe, and having a good build for it is a fantastic thing. I think that this is probably one of the better options, honestly. We'll see how well this amount of power does on running that many factories. Koiskix rocking 107 surplus, which means he actually has enough to continue his factory builds and get a T2 mass extractor should he wish to, but usually T2 mass extractors on a map such as this is a death sentence. He definitely just needs to get more production down as quickly as he possibly can. Flipping over to Platinizer, we've got a single mass extractor deficit, 17 versus 15 income, 240 power total versus 180. So Platinizer is going to be in a slightly better position to bump up those reclaim numbers, but no, that is not actually a reclaim-centric power build. That is an air factory online, so he's going to have an excellent harassment tool that his opponent will not have access to until he reflexively builds an air factory just too late and manages to lose his entire group of engineers to a bomber that he cannot prevent because he didn't have an air factory. Air Scout is going to move across the middle, though. Let's watch the reaction times here. There's the Air Scout. Let's see how long it takes him to change his build. I'm just holding down the shift key here to see what he does. Although he may, who knows, opt for rolling T1 mobile anti-air instead of building an air factory. Though that seems like a relatively poor choice in the grand scheme of things. The way this map is split up makes for some very odd pathfinding. We've got a looping plateau that rolls across to a ramp down into the main valley on both sides. And then this cliff face here does not allow units to transition from the plateau to the lowlands. So if you get units on here, they are trapped until they're able to travel all the way around to either one end or the other of the ramp. And this means that if your units are placed correctly, as Koiskix did here, you can actually divide and conquer your opponent's units quite easily. That is going to be 3 tanks versus 1. Already took out an engineer. This is going to be a clean victory. Well, no, hold on. Why are they sitting still and targeting a half-built T1 point defense? I do not understand. That is a major, major micro blunder from Koiskix, although he does have more than enough tanks to make up for the gap. Got an air factory going down on the front, which seems unwise considering his current power levels. We're at -4 draw. He did rush build 4 power generators before dropping this air factory and is building multiple power generators in the home base. So hopefully he will not stall and will come out ahead on that. 27 mass, 260 power on his edge. There's the stall incoming. Platinizer on the other side, 25 in the hole, relying on income fairly heavily from mass reclaim that he simply is not getting since his forward engineers died. So he's running into a stall at 17 mass per tick with 360 power, 100 of that overflowing. So at this point, 200 of that overflowing. He has drastically overbuilt power. He is still building power, and there is no sign of stopping. Looks like Koiskix did make the wise choice to pause the air factory instead of power stalling, so kudos to him for the epic management of his economy. And he's got his ACU positioned a little bit farther over towards the left. Now in the tank meetup to the north, it does look like the superior numbers are on Koiskix's side, but we are seeing a bit of a resurgence on the south as more tanks begin to collect for Platinizer. We've got 8 land factories online with no additionals planned. Meanwhile, on the north, there are 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hold on. Brink cannot math. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 planned. So Platinizer has an extremely short-term theoretical production lead. However, as we saw before, his lack of mass and lack of reclaim is forcing him into such an incredibly difficult stall that he's not able to run his land factories. So that means that even with the superior number, he will have the inferior number of units. ACU claiming the stuff in the front. Looks like some relatively bad positioning on his engineers as far as reclaiming goes. Koiskix merrily trundling about and sucking up mass wherever he goes as he rolls into his next land factory. That is going to be 31 mass income for 40 power with excellently balanced bars on both. He is running all of his factories wide open with no signs of slowing down. That's going to be Platinum-Iser engaging with the ACU, hopefully generating a bit of reclaim from the wreckages, although he's decided to instead move up towards the north with the ACU, I believe in a pincer maneuver in an effort to catch his opponent off guard. However, that is going to leave his base open, and Koiskix is going to pull tanks over to kill off the mass extractors and move around on the southern edge in a pincer on Platinum-Iser's base. So this basically comes down to, can Koiskix keep his ACU alive? Because if he does for about 2 minutes, I believe his tank numbers are so superior that he will be able to crush uncontested. Platinum-Iser is going to pull his ACU back, fending off the horde on his doorstep as Koiskix buffers nicely with his T1 units, pulling his ACU back to safety. That is, however, going to leave the base relatively undefended. There's only a handful of tanks available to hit up these units as RD fires upon the build power there. It looks like the land factories are going to be able to soak enough of the damage that significant gains will be made in the tank count, as well as that bomber knocking out a couple of tanks simultaneously with a single bomb. That is always a good sign. And that is going to be the base safe. Did not even lose the power storage. That would have been an excellent target indeed. Costs about the same amount of mass as a land factory and costs the enemy his overcharge when it is killed. So it looks like things have become a bit more stable on the map. Platinum-Iser still struggling with his mass income, but you will notice that there has been this lovely mass dump on the front line. So he should be able to recoup the costs very quickly and pump units out into the world at an astronomical pace with the land factories that he has available. Koiskix dropping yet another land factory on the front line, probably to go strictly for reclaim engineers on this front edge. He really needs to get this field under control. If he does, he continues to keep this game cinched down. If he does not, he leaves an opportunity for Platinum-Iser to catch up and surpass him. Looks like we've got T2 land on the field. That is going to be pillars rolling out into combat. Of course, you want to keep those away from the ACU. They deal with T1 land units exceptionally well, but once they come up against an ACU, especially when you know your opponent has an energy storage, they are overcharged fodder to the greatest degree. That is just going to cost you more mass in the long run. Zuis need to pull back, getting in some excellent firing patterns on the tank as they approach. However, once they get in range of that artillery, it is nowhere near as good for you. Tanks almost always win versus artillery with even the most minimal amount of micro, and you got to get them away from that hard-hitting front line. T2 upgrade going down on Platinum-Iser's commander. Very odd choice. I would have gone gun upgrade. I would almost say that gun upgrade is better 100% of the time on a 5-kilometer land map, because the amount of territory that you can exert control over with a gun ACU is game-changing. And also, when your opponent is going for T2, that we do not know, yeah, he has got that scouted, so he knows that that HQ is there. When you see T2 on the map, the best option is almost always gun, because you can reach out a bit further to overcharge those initial T2 units, negating the advantage that your opponent gets from that headquarters. Looks like pressure is being put on all sides, but Platinum-Iser is handling it very well for the most part. I am saddened by the lack of reclaiming engineers on the front line. Platinum-Iser rocking that 1800 rank you would think that he would react a bit better, but Koiskix is trouncing him in most of the areas that matter. This may be a case of a 1500 globally rated player who has a sky-high amount of experience on the ladder versus an 1800 globally rated team player who does not play that much in the 1v1 scene. Iser about 40% on his ACU upgrade. Looking from his point of view, the battlefield seems to be quite easily handled. But seeing these T2 units closing in on the north side, I can tell you it's only a matter of time before the northern edge collapses. We've also got T1 bombers wreaking havoc amidst Iser's units, taking out 5-6 on the front line and looping about for even more as that ACU continues to struggle forwards with the upgrade. We've got T2 dropping on Koiskix's ACU. Very interesting choice there. Complete and total air domination for the green side, and Iser struggling to get above 20 income, even counting reclaim. 17 mass protect, 500 power versus Koiskix at a whopping 39, more than double his opponent's mass income with 140 more power to boot. We've also got Iser Control King. I was going to point out, he's in the middle of that upgrade, and the T1 artillery is hitting the ACU, stripping that HP away, while T2 tanks are waiting on the sidelines to charge in for the kill. That was excellently played by Koiskix. Very good reclaim patterns, utter domination of the land game early on, showing the strength that T1 land brings to the field on a 5-kilometer map. It is often good to go for third air at maximum on a 5-kilometer map. Usually you don't build air unless you're planning shenanigans or your opponent has already gone air, because the tanks are so much more valuable for overall land control. I think that early air factory cost Iser, the lack of engineers to reclaim cost Iser, and in the end he just could not get his positioning back to drag that game out of the gutter. Very well played by both of these guys. I think even the worst of them had a better build order than I would have. And congrats to Koiskix for bumping up through to the next round of the losers bracket. Iser has been knocked from the tournament. We're going to be diving into round 2 of the winners bracket now in the Legend of the Stars qualifier number 4. It is a symmetrical Cybern matchup. Kizer versus Sagada. Both of these guys masterclass 1 versus 1 players, and the map is Abhor. The molten skull glaring at me from the center makes me regret every life choice that I have made up till this point. We've got water on the edge of the map. This is a good retreat area for ACUs. I'm not sure that the ACU can get completely underwater in that one, but we do know that they can in the center troughs. We've got 4 mass extractors at the start with a hydro exceptionally far away on both sides, so definitely good for your power needs later in the game, but not accessible for early upgrades and whatnot. We've also got water on the back side of the map covering 2 mass extractors with another mass extractor only accessible by transport behind each base and then on 2 side expansion plateaus. All in all, this map is a bit choke pointy, with a wide open area of access in the middle, though most of the control points are towards the middle of the map. So if you break this down into 50-50 map control, it is relatively easy to hold. However, once you start poking and prodding, there are 3 access points on one side and 2 access points on the other side by which to get into your opponent's base. So you do have to have some mobile units. It is not all about that fire base, and you will have to have some forethought put in as to how to protect your edges. Sagada is on the north in the lovely blue. He is going for second air. This is a 10-kilometer map, by the way, so disregard my advice on 5-kilometer maps from the last game on not going for second or maybe even third air factory. We've got engineers expanding every which way in order to get up. Oh, that is actually some tasty reclaim in the back there. I did not even notice that. So pick up that mass, get the other mass extractor, and then get some reclaim on the rocks to the right-hand edge. ACU finishing construction in the middle, raiding party headed out to the left, or possibly a guarding party to prevent these engineers from getting sniped off. And then we do have a land factory in the expansion going down, probably to build some engineers to suck up all of the mass in these trees and rocks. Taking a look at the other side, Kizer is dropping 2 land factories, then an air factory. Actually, that's the exact same build Sagada is doing. Although Kizer, I think, has been a bit more strategic in his application of build power because he already has 3 factories online, though he is being a bit slower about his expansion. So Sagada is going to end up significantly more power heavy, with a bit more production later, with more mass in his coffers, whereas Kizer is going for the all-out cutthroat aggression that will possibly allow him to take a superior hold on the land game early. So we've got power generator going down, Kizer rocking a fairly epic amount of power stall, though he does have a sufficient level of mass to make all of this work. And he's got his ACU moving forward, I think due to a misclick on a power generator that's slightly out of reach, that is going to build this PGen, then the other, and then a land factory. So slightly rough start there for Kizer, but he is going to pull it back. Sagada, on the other hand, perfectly full on mass. He's got a fair amount of reclaim that's keeping his bar sustained. And we've got a split on the engineers after the hydro, moving up to get reclaim on the forward edge, and then grabbing a couple more mass extractors over to the side. First air scout out, that's going to let him know exactly what's coming, what he is running into, and we've got land scouts as well. So that's going to be 3-4 tanks versus 3 tanks. A little bit of a detrimental amount, but with more Mantis streaming forward from the rear supporting factory, I don't think that it will be such an issue. We got more land factories and more power generators going down for Sagada. ACU will become a valuable fighting resource later on in the game for controlling a choke point or two, but early on, they're choosing to keep not both. Sagada is choosing to use his ACU as the 2 T1 engineers that it's worth. Meanwhile, Kizer is stepping up slightly to build his mainline production on the front edge, rolling into the central plateau. So the goal here is going to be to hold these 2. Because if you hold these 2, you gain a strategic advantage of being able to attack through 3 different routes while only having 1 route to defend. So the person who holds these 2 edges is going to be in a significantly better position than his opponent is. I do like the amount of Mantis that are rolling out now for Sagada. They are going to be able to secure that with a fair bit of ease. And then while this engineer... Oh, 1-8! No! It almost got away on 1 HP. That was so close. That is going to unfortunately slow down the reclaim prospect for Sagada, but all is most assuredly not lost. He is going to dive straight in. I think he realizes that he has a superior number, and he is going to go in after Kizer is going to retreat in the face of it. We've got engineers moving over to the side while troops are redirected. Looks like Sagada is going to say it's good enough and not overexpose, leaving reclaim on his opponent's side of the field. Though, looking at the amount of rocks that are available every which way here, I don't know that a couple of T1 wrecks will make that much of a difference. Kizer rocking out to the tune of 27 mass income, 540 power, 31,520 on Sagada. So Kizer running a little bit more power centric at the moment, honestly, though as you can see, when he mass stalls due to not pulling in enough reclaim, he's actually almost 400 power overbuilt. So he really needs to get that reclaim in to fuel his war machine, because I believe he has more land factories total. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. That's gonna be wait, what? Oh, it separates the idle. Never mind. That is a total of 11 land factories versus 14. Holy crap. Sagada actually has more thanks to the ones that he is building on the front coupled with the 2 in the expansion. That also gives him more factories to build out his engineer population to get even more mass income from reclaim. So right now, just looking at the field, it would appear that there is a fairly significant tank advantage to the north. 55 tanks, 6 interceptors. versus a whopping 39 and 8. So fairly significant lead, somewhere around the vicinity of 20% more tanks on Sagada's side of the map. Although a bit of strategic ACU placement and some finagling ought to even up those odds. So do not count Kizer out just yet. Looks like Air Factory is pumping away with the help of 3 engineers, so that's like 1.75 Air Factories. It's not quite 2, versus only 1 Air Factory to the north. So the air superiority is going to increase for Sagada as the game goes on. We've got a radar up in the center. He had better build, and yes he is. He had better queue up some T1 point defense, because with this close on his ACU, he is going to lose control of the center plateau, and that is a serious threat to his health and well-being. However, with the unit placement on this edge, that does mean that if Kizer pushed over to the left, he could wipe out the entire left side expansion. That is honestly an excellent choice to make, but he is going to get his units scattered. He's going to fork out around the pond instead of focusing in one direction, and that is going to give Sagada a good opportunity to regroup. I think that was a very significant loss of opportunity there. More Mantis moving into the expansion, at a minimum going to wipe out the engineers that are on base there. Possibly take out a mass extractor, but not much else will be done in the way of harm. Tanks are looking much better in the middle, though, thanks to the diversion of those units to the left-hand edge. Sagada does have a transport out, and he's dropping the plateaus, but you'll notice that Kizer is right on schedule doing the same thing. So that's going to be 1 mass extractor for this engineer, plus some reclaim. Same thing up here. Might even consider dropping a point defense and a T1 anti-air turret just to deny other drops that may come in. I love the raiding party up here. Look at how many tanks this has diverted from Sagada's front line. Far more than the 5 tanks that are actually causing the issue. That is just griefing to the maximum level possible and exerting control over the battlefield in the form of directing your opponent's tanks on your own terms. There's the air win right there. Kizer seizing control of the skies. Hopefully that'll let him start pushing out, yes, a greater quantity of bombers to start catching up on the unit counts. You'll notice that a lot of these are bunched up in formation and also clumping around the edge of the water. So T1 bombers are going to do an excellent job of closing in the unit gap. Looks like we've got T2 HQ online for Sagada. That is in a very well optimized and tightly clustered base, honestly. I can appreciate this as a man of symmetry myself. Then on the south side, we do not have a T2 HQ, or it looks like any plans for a T2 HQ. Although, nope, that is still building bombers. We do have 3 T2 mexes on the southern edge. So that is 1 more than the north side has. Kizer is almost tied up in mass income, not significantly behind anymore. And these bombers are causing havoc, let me tell ya. Even though they may not straight up kill units in one pass, look at how heavy the damage is on all these things. Some of them are 1 bullet away from their demise. So that is going to greatly help out. Oh dear. Oh dear. Kizer has just flown his interceptors over a flak. That is wiped out his air superiority in one fell swoop. And now the T1 bombers are struggling to soften up this unit formation on the left before it pushes in and takes away the expansion over that away. However, the bombers are doing a good job of getting their payloads delivered, except for that one. He did not drop, and his wreck did not damage a unit. That leaves things fairly close to a stalemate, except for the fact that, yeah, there it is. T2 HQ. Kizer has pulled it out, and he has 4 mass ahead due to another T2 mass extractor coming online. So let's take a count on the units. That is going to be 1 Rhino, 107 Mantis versus Sagada, who is at 165 Mantis and 2 Rhinos. So significantly ahead in his unit count still. 9,800 reclaim on Sagada versus 7,100 on Kizer. So it's going to take a little while for Kizer to recoup that 2,000 mass disadvantage plus the disadvantage he had for the first 10 minutes of the game on income overall. But it is within sight. He may still yet be able to do it. I would love to see a gun upgrade going down on these ACUs. Sometimes it astounds me how long pro-level players will operate with an unupgraded commander. I do realize that those upgrades are expensive. I get it. I really do. But gun upgraded commanders are just so satisfying to play with. Looks like the T1 bombers are going to get shot down, but thanks to some heavy assistance on the air factory, now running at about 2.5 air production, that is going to let him once again swoop in for control, leaving him a bit scarce on unit count though. We do have mobile flak in most of the forces, as you can see, so that means that his interceptors are not going to be able to exert control over enemy units. A sad, sad development indeed. Is this going to be a fast T3? It does not appear so. We've got rhinos moving. We've got 2 additional support factories online with 2 more in the base. That is why the unit count has gone so low. He's decided to flip his entire production for rhinos at once. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the north, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the south with heavy assistance on both edges. So the production does look to slightly favor Sagada by engineer count. The air production is real over here. We've got 4 air factories online, nearly doubling the amount of production that Kizer is devoting. He does have another air factory over to the right, but that is shut down. This is a sketchy group of upgrades right here. Kizer going for T2 mass extractors on the far right edge. He is losing his mass lead due to his expansions falling, which is incredibly unfortunate, and this is in danger of falling to the units over on the right hand side. So I'm not sure that I can get entirely behind that decision, but he is a far better player than I, so I guess who am I to question? Sagada just started the gun upgrade. I was going to move over and check him for anything going on, and that is definitely going on. Attack defense moving up on the front of the base. We've got a second T2 power generator going down. Meantime, in the middle, a fight for the life of these Mantis. They are roughly 50% outnumbered at the start of it, now nearly doubled in quantity. We've got T1 point defense, we've got rhinos, we've got the ACU to move in and fight. The issue is that there are T2 units on this side. There's more units moving in to back up, and this is going to be a very difficult mass field for Kizer to control. If he's able to bring this in to his bank account, he might be able to make up for everything that's gone wrong in the last few minutes. He's just got to beat it back though. Notice the Medusas dealing epic damage due to the stun effect on those rhinos. When you're stunned, you can't fire back and you can't move, and that leads to a sweeping victory for Sagada on those units in the center. The ACU still standing strong, hoping to get an overcharge off, I am sure, but he is struggling at the moment to hold. He is going to have to back up to not risk losing the ACU. That's going to be production offline at the front. Kizer forced back into a defensive position. Meanwhile, trying to boost up his hold on the left-hand side, trying to take advantage of the distracted APM of Sagada, but Sagada, I think, is having none of it as he continues to roll a monumental amount of tanks off that front line. Kizer down now to about 60% HP. He's packed up 5 rhinos behind him, and it looks like the push has finally thinned for Sagada, but that's going to cost Kizer 2 T2 support factories. That is a lot of production that he did not need to lose. Cleanup by the T2 tanks on the left-hand side may gain him control of that plateau, and Kizer's actually pushing. We've got a secure on the right side expansion. That T1 point defense causing a bit of devastation on the tanks as they pass by. But a T1 mass extractor does go down, and those tanks will be able to push further into the territory, diverting more resources from Sagada's base. Oh, Kizer, no! Kizer walked into the tanks. The misclick is real. Oh. I have no words. Sagada had dragged that back. He had the tanks. He had the increasing map control. Look at this left side. Look at this raid. There's nothing there to stop it. He would have killed T2 mass extractors. He'd already cleaned out this zone. He's reclaiming all the way around. He had it. He was suiciding? Oh. Wow. Sorry, Kizer. Kizer, yes. I am partially convinced that he actually misclicked into that. I don't know for sure. My goodness. If that was a throw, what a throw. If that was a suicide, I don't know why he was suiciding, because he was going to be able to gut out Sagada's expansions and take control of the map. That was absolutely ludicrous. Hell of a game either way. Sagada well, okay. Both of these guys were showing us two sides of the coin on 1 versus 1 gameplay. Sagada had a much more conservative approach with stronger, close to base expansion, picking up the reclaim, taking his upgrades early, not raiding, instead going for a defensive posture and building up as much as possible, which gave him the early game advantage in mass and very nearly toppled Kizer. Kizer went for the opposite approach. Aggression, early factories, more units on the field. Sagada was able to use his strategic expansion to his advantage through the majority of that game. I think his plan tended to be stronger, though I'm not sure if that was a failure of unit placement by Kizer or a misapplication. I'm not sure. But he did end up with a power stall in his base, so perhaps a slight reevaluation of the build order would be in order, and then it would work a little bit better. However, Kizer dragged it back, and that is... Whew. That was close. That was almost a flip. Well done to both of these guys. Congrats to Sagada for moving up through the winner's bracket, and Kizer is going to drop down to the losers round. That is going to wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.